Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. In this podcast, we'll dive into the strategies that top leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs are using to navigate and thrive in this era of accelerating technological change. Whether you're looking to lead more effectively, make smarter investments, or understand how to harness disruptive technologies for exponential growth, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature conversations with visionary thinkers, industry pioneers, and innovative leaders who are redefining what's possible in today's rapidly evolving world. So if you're ready to start and stay ahead of this curve, let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. All right, everyone. Well, hey, welcome to another episode of the Exponential Growth Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, somebody I've known probably a little over a decade. We met through Notre Dame's Irish Angel Network. Found out that we grew up somewhat in the south side of Chicago-ish. And obviously we have the Notre Dame connection, but if you go to his LinkedIn, you'll see making sense of what's new and next is kind of one of the thesis lines. And, you know, he's an inventor, an investor, a futurist, a professor. We'll chat a little bit more about being a professor. And then he helps leaders arrive tomorrow slightly ahead of schedule. He used the word slightly, just slightly ahead of schedule.
Yeah, we don't want to get too crazy.
So welcome to the podcast, Mike Bechtel.
Oh, thank you so much, David. Dude, it's a pleasure to be jamming with you. And yeah, the origin story does go way back, right? I mean, because remind me, you were a Northwest Indiana kid, or
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Grew up in Northwest Indiana. Yep.
Yeah, good old Calumet City on this side, represent. So
Oh boy, yeah. That's yeah, it was right across the border. Then it was like River Oaks over there. I don't know if you know, like the little shopping mall and
100%. And a testament to like interstate commerce, right? Because we would come, I'd never forget, my dad would always joke that we would drive east of the border for cheap pops, which for a global audience, soda, cheap pops, and in his case, smokes. God bless him, rest in peace.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then you'd come over to our side of the border for, I'm not sure, higher taxes and better concerts.
Well, and the sports teams, I guess too, right? The downtown and great sports teams. But who knows? You know, that might change. People might be. We'll see what happens with the Chicago Bears here. That seems to be going back and forth. But well, you touched on a little bit. You know, this is exponential growth. Before we jump in, we just want to level set and let everybody know. Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, because I know bits and pieces of it. I don't know all of it, but would love to hear it.
Oh man, happily. Well, again, thanks for having me on, Dave. And you know, so you know, deconstructing that gracious intro a little, like inventor turned investor. What's that? Well, you know, when I popped out of college with this motley mix of majors, anthropology, political science, with a minor in politics, philosophy, and economics, you know, I'm pretty sure I'm destined to be, you know, a poet, or, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but, you know, not exactly an exponential growth sort of a capitalist career. And the rub was, you know, it was 1998. And, you know, if you could spell WWW, David, you remember, like you were issued a laptop and a latte and you were told, go be a consultant.
Yeah.
And why? Well, looking back, here's my theory. Here's my thesis on this, buddy. You know, technology consulting, it's not about knowing all the things, right? It's about being more up to speed on the emerging things than your client, right? You don't have to be perfect. You have to be merely very helpful. And there's that old line, right? You know, you're being chased by a bear. You don't got to be faster than the bear. You got to be faster than your friends.
That's right.
And and so after a couple of years as a consultant, it occurred to me that my sweet spot was the creative side, right? A little less the, competitive race to the bottom, proven solutions to known problems at a low margin. It was more, can you can you conceive of something altogether newfangled that would solve, a new problem? And so for 10 years I worked as an inventor, 12 US patents, just short of white lab coats, but almost. And
And where was this where you're pulling these patents together? Where and how do you do it?
yeah, well, so I worked as a part of a group at Accenture, David, called the Accenture Technology Labs.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
I remember that. I remember that.
yeah,
Well, I think that was another thing that we had in common. I don't. Well, we may not have met each other, but there was at the time it was in Northbrook, Illinois. I don't know if it moved or
yeah,
what they call it, C Star or something like that, or
C-Star.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that
And it
was
was
it.
amazing.
Yeah.
By the way, is a little sign. But people like AI is huge and big and all that kind of stuff. But like they were doing AI research and they had like first demo apps where they were like going out and trying to find the cheapest CD for those who are like, a CD is this little round thing, right? That you would use to hear
Right.
music, but it would go out and find the cheapest one and then spit back the answer. It was like a little, it was amazing. So I'm very familiar with C Star, but continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, you hit on an important point there, buddy, because when you grow up immersed in all things newfangled, like I did in Sea Star, what you realize is relatively few of these headline technologies are truly new, right? It's easy and it's clickable to say it's a revolution, but take it from a geek like me. I had a front row seat to the steady evolution of machine learning, traditional AI, predictive analytics as it turned the corner from descriptive, and so that's all to say, there's that old William Golding, I'm sorry, no, William Golding's Lord of the Flies, William Gibson quote. He says, "The future's already here. It's not very evenly distributed."
Yeah.
Well, it was no more concentrated and closely distributed than that group of, you know, uh, dear friends who I affectionately call the nerds and wizards of Sea Star and Accenture Technology Labs. So anyway, around 10 years into that journey, I remember I met a private equity pro. And this fella, he didn't really sound like Dr. Evil, but for the purposes of the story, I'm going to make him sound like Dr. Evil. He comes up to us and he goes, consulting, a rather vicarious profession. And David, I'd never heard the word vicarious out of the sentence construction, to live vicariously.
Yeah.
And so he caught me off guard with that. But what he was doing was he was both truth telling and roasting me a little. Because what he was saying was like, it must be neat to be like a drive-by advice giver without skin in the game.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh goodness, like what a way to reframe my 10 years having fun as an inventor, right? As a sort of a outside the arena exercise. And so after a short stint in early childhood education, not for profit, with a great client where I became their CTO, co-founded a venture capital firm. And we got busy trying to, well, be less vicarious, right? To put skin in the game and pursue exponential growth, right? And we did all right, right? We beat the S&P 500, but probably not by enough to justify the 10-year liquidity lockup.
Yeah, that's right. That's when you invest in this asset class, folks, it's high risk, high reward, but it's
Oh,
you know
oh,
you don't get it for 10 years, maybe 12, depends, right? It takes,
right. Like Schrodinger's cat. Is it alive? Is it dead? It's both. Now shut up and come back in 7 years. And I, what I learned, David, about myself in that pivot from, I like to say, art of the possible to art of the profitable, is that I don't think I was put on this earth to be a banker. And that's no shade at your beautiful audience, right? Like there's a lot of people who are brilliant financial minds, financial engineers, growth hackers, you name it.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I really, in my own language, it occurred to me that, God put me on this earth to be a little bit more of a creator than a critic. right? I didn't want to pick the ponies. I wanted to ride the ponies. And so when this opportunity came in 2018 to lead global technology research and sense making and evangelism and, not quite development, well, a little, but I like to say chief geek
Yeah.
for Deloitte
Yeah.
globally, I said, oh my goodness, like what a righteous
Dream
opportunity to
role.
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, mix that first 10 years of what we could do with that last 10 years of what you should do. And it was a wonderful ride. And David, man, I was that global firm's most frequent flyer for 2 years. I was averaging
Wow.
135 keynotes a year for a 3 year
Wow.
span. And it was deeply fulfilling, but it was also a little much. It was a little too fatiguing.
Yeah.
So
Well, and having, like, and if, when you're good too, that's, because so if you're a partner at an account and you want to, impress your account with, smart people, entertaining people,
right.
like Mike, Mike will make you, he'll educate you and he'll make you laugh. And it's like a bit of edutainment. Uh, uh,
Yep.
but if you're running this an account, any of the like Deloitte, they're Fortune 500, global Fortune, and you want to impress your account, you bring in somebody like Mike, and and the account team loves it, your client loves it. It helps you get more business. You're educating them, and it's just part of the job of doing that. But to your point, you're on the road you're on the road all the time. It's cool. I mean, there's good pros and cons to it. I'm about
Yeah.
2 million miles or so pros and cons to it, but yeah, I can get it.
Well, and David, having been in versions of that seat before, I mean, you can empathize. I mean, my wife Barb, who's my beautiful bride of 25 years, and all is good here in Mudville. But I'll remember she's a marriage and family therapist, and so she she's really good. She's really good.
That's, wait
She's
a
a
second.
professional.
This is like a joke. All right, hey, 182 flight and the
Right.
marriage counselor walks into a bar. And
Right. What could go wrong? Well, but here's the thing, buddy. As a mental health professional, one of her superpowers is she asks these questions and then just lets me, stumble into the grenade, right? And so she says, honey, you think if you gave 150 keynotes, it'd be a better fit? And then she just let it hang like that. And what she expertly did, David, was she helped me realize that I was trying to solve a fit and fulfillment problem with quantity instead of strategy, right? And that, to your point, and you said it so well, happy clients, right? Happy account teams, it, it, it would never be enough.
yeah.
And so I decided a little under a year ago, well, 7 months, 6, 7 months, to hang my own shingle. And as I joke, right, maximum self-deprecation, turn the corner from Deloitte chief futurist to a guy with opinions. But I'll, but
You know what they say about opinions?
oh yeah, yeah, I know, I got the, I do acutely. But I'll tell you, it's it's been heartening and it's been bracing and it's been wonderful. Partly for all the entrepreneurial reasons your audience knows and loves, right? Exponential growth, skin in the game, stake in my own outcome, right?
Right.
Agency, autonomy, all that. But the other part of it too is there's a whole world of clients out there who've told me right to my face, listen, the big brand halo can be pretty swell, but I really value your objectivity and candor now that you're solo because you're in a position to um, essentially deliver what's best, right? What's best for me as opposed to what's best for the market. And I said,
Right, right, right.
so
Yeah. Because by the way, if I'm an account team and I'm flying you out to my account, my Fortune 500, whatever,
right.
yeah, you're giving an opinion, but there's a reason why I'm flying you out, that I want you to be there, right? I mean, an
Yeah.
indirect, hey, hey, what's on the account? What are the deal? What are the, you're always, there's a little bit of an angle there, right? So
There's in psychology, the 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 great blogger cartoonist Tim Urban. I don't know if you know the website Wait But
No.
Why, but it's world class. Highly recommend to anybody. He's now
Okay.
writing books and everything. But he turned me on to this term that I love. He calls it motivated reasoning. And
Hmm.
it's a psychological or social psychological term, but all it means, David, is um, something can be reasonable, right? But if it's motivated by a set of incentives and belief systems, right, you can bet that it's also going to be motivated. And
Oh
so to
yeah.
your point, yeah, it's like, here's what's best for you, given all the other obligations that I happen to have, given my, relationships, accounts, employer, and net worth.
Totally, totally. So now you've been roughly 7 months or so in the entrepreneur game. I saw a recent post. You said, "Hey, I've been 7 months at it. Here's a couple things that I reflect back, a couple kind of key insights. Just briefly, what were those key insights you could share with the audience?"
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you one is it, I I wasn't in my bones. I wasn't prepared for the lumpiness, the feast and famine.
Volatility.
Oh, volatility, baby. I mean, like the Sharp ratio of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is low. And I remember that first October, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is a glitch in the matrix. I'm working less and I'm making the same and I'm happy. And then a month later, well, I'm working the same and I'm making more and I'm still happy. And then in December, it was crickets. And and back to my brilliant bride Barb, who asked the good questions. She says to me, she goes, "Do you ever think there's a fine line between self-employment and unemployment?" And brother, I felt that, right? Like heading into New Year's, I'm like, "Ah." But then January got off to a strong start. February was great. March was bonkers by any measure, right? And so pipeline management volatility, I think that was thing one. I think thing two, and this will be two of three just to manage your sanity
Yeah.
and our audience expectations and energy. Thing two was I was shocked at the percentage of practice management, back office, call it admin, that had been white gloved out of my responsibility set when I
Oh
was
yeah.
working as part of big organizations, right?
Yeah.
Like invoicing.
Yeah.
Woof. Are you right? Net 70. What? What like just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
when it runs well, it's nuts and it rarely runs well, right? And
Yeah.
so that's to say, the back office stance was a surprise. But I think
And
that
you don't have an admin doing your invo. Well, maybe you do, but a lot of times when you're starting out, you just go to Google Sheets, you crank one out, and you pop them out, right?
right. And David, I think for the purposes of our jam today, brother, three of three, the kind of the shiny side of that penny was I realized that when you're a solopreneur in 2026, right, in this age of exponentials, in this AI fueled moment, what you lack in organizational heft and firepower, you more than make up for in agency and ability to spin up these little robot helpers left, right, and center. And so it was funny, in my chief futurist role, I'm running around God's green earth telling everybody about the power of agentic AI. But it wasn't until I was sitting there in my office thinking about how intractable these invoices felt. I was like, well, what if I cook up a little agent? I'm going to call him Ted, and Ted's going to figure out how to optimally align these fields for these people. And Ted's going to come back when he's stuck. And one day, Ted's less stuck because he's off to the races and helping. And I didn't have to wait and ask for organizational permission or deal with red tape. The punchline, buddy, being, holy moly, it's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur with all these
Totally.
tools and affordances. And on the flip side, right? Not cast in stones, just you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. Now that I'm outside this jar, I'm thinking, man, it's never been a rougher time to be a traditional W-2 employee. Because by the time you get the 6 meetings and the 16 sign-offs to even test an AI
And
tool,
align to the, you got to get and meet and oh
and
no,
it got
vacations and just yeah, it's
by the time that goes on, a guy like you and me have built, like a fleet of robot reinforcements to run a couple laps around you. So that I think is the beautiful flip side is, yeah, you got to take out your own trash, pardon the expression, but look at all these robot henchmen you can line up to help with the muck.
totally, totally. So so Exponential Growth Podcast, right? We like, we talk about trends, thesis on investment, perspectives, and then leadership. So trends. And I saw you speak maybe 2, 3 years backish to Irish Angels. And kind of this is when you were at Deloitte and kind of shared a couple kind of what you thought were the big trends. And at the time, I think it was AI and I think it
Yep.
was longevity. I think you talked
Mm,
about a bit about well, I think or health or something like that.
yeah.
Um fast forward, we're 2, 3 years after that. Are those still like you'd call them the big three? What should our listener and by the way, to the listeners out there, like this guy was technology futurist leader at one of the world's leading company that advises companies on what they should do for the future. So
Yeah.
what do you think are the top three ones that our listeners should keep on their minds?
Right on, man. And a good memory. Like grateful for your participation and recollection of whatever I was yakking about.
Hey, well, when you
To
talk about like when you have investing and future and all that kind of stuff, like I'm dialed in. I am
you're
dialed
locked
in.
in. You're locked in. There's alpha in that there hill.
Totally,
Um,
totally.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite authors, Henry David Thoreau, right? He had this great line. He said, "Read not the times, read the eternities." And what he meant by that at the time was like, hey, there's always going to be a daily outrage in the newspaper, like AKA the Times. Um, Pull back and take a little more heed to what's not changing, to what's enduring, right? And so when I tell you that I'm still banging the same drum I was banging a couple years ago, that's not to be perceived as like, the sad balloon sound. Like
Yeah,
rather, I really think, right, per a life lived, dealing with all this geeky stuff and a whole lot of time spent researching emerging tech, that every IT system in the history of tech tends to boil down to an interface, a database, and a number crunching place, right? It's the classic three-tiered architecture. And what's funny, David, you remember like one guy like you and I joined the party in the 80s or 90s, you know, they had their own name and feel, right? It was like client server architecture, right? And RDBMS and all this other geekery. Well, the names change, but the enduring endures. And so to answer your question, what's new on the interface front? I continue to believe that we're headed towards. It's slow, it's sure, but it's not quite as much hype as AI party. But we're headed to a post-screen future.
I agree.
Do you? Do you? Have
Yeah,
you
no.
seen it? I mean, keeping a conversation. Let me ask you: have you seen signs of traction in, call it AR, VR, conversational, spatial, brain computer interface, things other than rectangles? What have you seen out there?
Yeah, so I mean, well, I've made an investor in one called Enclue. They're out of Chicago. They've got a really good call it augmented reality, uh, scenes and things like that. I've been keeping up with Neuralink.
Yep.
They're doing some interesting things. But I think there's still a lot I think there's still a long ways to go. But I see a world where you can you have some whether it's glasses and there's been lots of different releases of glasses. They seem to be getting better over time.
Yep.
And you're gonna have all this AI and intelligence just around anything. You're walking down a street, you're walking through
Right.
a store, you're gonna get so a little bit of the answer to your question. It still has a long way to go though.
Right. Well, it does. And I think on the interface layer specifically, right? So, and again, my religion here, for lack of better words, right? Interface,
Yeah.
database, number crunching place, front end,
Yeah.
middle, back end. On the front end, what I've seen over the last 25 years, and really, if you look back over the last 250, every evolution is dismissed as a toy until it becomes a de facto tool, right? The graphical user interface, right, coming out of Xerox PARC was seen as cute, but no serious professionals would have pictures of a garbage can on their desk. Are you serious, Melvin? Right? Because because science and work and accounting felt like green screens and command line and like, degrees. And then, here was my generation with our Windows 95 for Dummies books rolling in like, like we owned the place and we were dismissed until we were the de facto.
Yeah.
Well, we then saw that then we had a chance to play old guy as we watched, a bunch of millennials roll in with phones, right? Touching and swiping instead of clicking and typing, and that became the new normal.
Touching and
And
swiping instead of clicking and typing. I like it.
oh man, it's that liberal arts degree, David. It keeps on giving. But here's the thing, dude. The technologies that win on the interface layer are the ones that prove themselves to be simpler over the long haul. Simple always wins. And just as graphics were simpler than command line and touching and swiping was simpler than clicking and typing, our kids are going to look at screen-based interfaces and say, why am I going to disrupt my natural day with these glowing 16 by 9 rectangles? Can't I just talk and gesture and emote? And I agree with you, brother. I think AI is the unlock because instead of like frustrating gestural and contextually driven interfaces, you're gonna have a guide on the side that knows what you're after and says like, how about this? How about that? There's this great scene in Star Trek 4, 1985, I think, where James Doohan, Scotty, they go back in time to 1985, right? That's the conceit, right? Saving the whales. Did you ever see that one? It's so good.
No, 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 no.
Oh, you got
I might have. I just don't remember it.
yeah, no, if you're gonna watch an old Star Trek, either two or four, just take it from a geek. But anyway, they go back to Earth circa 1994, and Scotty picks up the mouse on the computer, right? You're all acted out. And he goes, computer, computer. And then the guy, it's 1984, right? He like puts his hand down and shows him he has to work it, that it's a mouse. And James Doohan goes, how quaint. I think that's exactly why this stuff will win. And it's going to have brand failure after brand failure, right? Metaverse, augmented reality. But you pull the long lens of history back, it's inevitable because it's simpler.
Yeah.
So that's thing one, I think, is AR, VR, and eventually brain computer Neuralink interfaces.
Yeah, and that's a whole where that thing can go is pretty amazing, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Dude, I mean, the idea that I can ask my, I don't want to trigger a bunch of your listeners' homes right now. Ask the black device on your desk to change the temperature in the house, right? That's the thing with AI, right? Um, Larry Tesler, the computer scientist, he said AI is whatever computers can't do yet. And the reason that's so clever is the moment they can do it, we just shrug it off as like part of the natural order of things. If you would have told us, right, bud, 10 years ago when we're at Irish Angels, first meeting, that you can ask your kitchen to change the thermostat, you'd be like, no. And now you're like, well, of course you can. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, to your point with brain computer interfaces, the idea that my daughter won't even have to ask, right? The machine will know that her medulla oblongata is sending a signal that suggests shivers, so raise the temp, right? Same vibes. You're gonna be like, that's nuts. But I'll tell you what's not nuts. Simpler, man. Simpler always wins.
Yeah. Totally, totally. So that a augmented reality space and with Neuralink is your number one. What's the
Yeah.
second? What's the second one?
Well, I think the second one, and we'll go Hollywood Squares here. I'll go to the bottom row. Like we'll visit
Okay.
Shadow Stevens for a second before we come to the middle row.
Okay.
On the number crunching place on the back end, I've got a little bit of a spicy take that I think mainstream enterprises, I don't know that they doubt it. They just tend to think it's a little contrarian. Um, I think decentralized computing platforms are still going to win. And that's geek speak for the B word, right? Blockchain, right? Bitcoin, right? And people say, well, didn't that thing die in 2022? Like what? Like I talked to one executive, David, who was so funny. He was this Californian. He's like, I don't know, bro. That whole sector feels like prison. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, like Sam Bankman-Fried and NFTs and like it's like a racket. Well, if you pull the lens back, just like we talked about with interfaces, cloud computing was essentially the recognition that ain't nobody got a server room in their basement as powerful as the basement over at Google, Amazon, Microsoft. Forget about it, right?
Yeah.
Through that same logic, ain't no hyperscaler's basement nearly as powerful as every computer on the internet acting as one singular master data management system. So if you rethink Bitcoin, cryptography, right, not as a get rich quick scheme, but as the intuitive endpoint of cloud, namely a single galactic supercomputer that arbitrates truth, false, trust, nonsense, then all of a sudden you're like, huh, maybe there's something to it. And so the price of Bitcoin, it's up, it's down, it's alive, it's dead. Well, over 15 years, no, man, it's up to the right, you know? And I think in the same way that you and I, used to say phrases like, Pixar, it didn't happen, right? But Bobby met Tom Cruise. Yeah, what Pixar, it didn't happen, David. I think our kids are going to say, like, listen, I can't trust my eyes and ears anymore. I can't trust governments. I can't trust businesses. I can't trust much. But you know what I can't trust? A cryptographic hash. And so I really believe in this idea of chain or it didn't happen becoming the new standard for computation. And that's why I'm really long on crypto and specifically Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm oh, I am for a lot of those reasons, and I think there's this whole where I don't call it agent to agent commerce, right? I wrote
Yeah.
something on it, right? Right, in today's world, right? You wake up and maybe you buy a stock or you do something and you in the future you're in a world where you have an army of agents. You maybe have your bond agent, you have your stock agent, you have a crypto agent, and they're just out there every day negotiating with other agents, finding arbitrage opportunities, the best. They're doing it 24 by 7. They're finding
Yes.
the best. And by the way, there's agents that could probably set up their own particular funds if they want that have their own. So you're seeing a lot of, and I don't think a lot of people see you, but you're seeing a lot of like digital credit and then
Right.
digital
Like
credit on top of digital credit and there's
digital
a lot of
credit.
and those are going to run like they run on Solana and Ethereum and all these different so it is but you're going to need it to be transparent, trust, quick, affordable. So yeah, I'm and then I mean I guess my last point is just like and I wrote about this 2 weeks ago, just,
Yeah.
the US debt and inflation and, they just kind of keep printing money. Your money gets inflated away. And, the one thing with at least Bitcoin is only 21, only 21 million of them. Only
21 million.
20, 21 million. Okay.
You know,
So we're aligned. We could jam a whole bunch on that one, but that's your bottom of the wonders, right?
it
Just the
is.
blockchain, the blockchain.
It is. It is. I think it's modern plumbing for, or I should say next generation plumbing for next generation computation, and it kind of lays out the carpet for the third and final thing, which is in the middle of that stack, right? The information layer, right? Interface, database, number crunching place. On the database layer, shocker, right? It's AI, and you know it's wild, right, David? Because back to Larry Tesler saying AI isn't new; it's whatever computers can't do yet. There's the geek in me who you know tries to tell people that AI isn't new and this is a thing and we've seen it, right? But you'd have to be a real stick in the mud not to recognize that we're going through something singular and generational right now with its application to general business. And given the theme of your pod and your work, I think the reason it's so exponential right now and will continue to be is you've got a couple things going on. One, you know, the reason we see so much talk and thinking about AI is because it's now to the point where it can talk and think and create opinion pieces of its own, right? So there's a recursive nature there. But I think the bigger thing is, I took this class back in college, David. It was a part of my anthropology studies, an archaeology class. This guy Jim Bellis. I remember he comes into class one day. It's like 1996. He goes, technology is just a puffy-chested four-syllable synonym for tool. And he has all of our attention. He goes, and he says, humans have been tool builders from the jump.
To survive, right?
Amen. Yeah. And, the first sharpened stone flakes, right? It sped up the time it took to, procure and prepare your dinner. And here's the rub. This is why this isn't some dusty distraction. What did humanity do with those freed up cycles? Did they, sit around in sloth and luxury, like eating that many more bobcats? No. You redeploy it to higher order pursuits, right? So what are you going to do? I don't know. How about the original external hard drive, right? Writing, right? The written language on tablets. And how about the Gutenberg, press? And how about the personal computer, World Wide Web, AI? To me, we get so focused on automation, doing yesterday faster, cheaper, skinnier, that we forget that the real trick is elevation, right? Automation frees cycles to kick things up a notch. And so to me, the exciting exponential story behind AI is it's not that you run your 2024 plan leaner, meaner, cleaner, right? I call it corporate, GLP-1. Like, to hell with that, right? It's like it's the old plan, but
there's a lot of there's a lot of use cases for corporate GLP-1s, let me tell you.
Oh, I tell you, buddy. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you can do today's work with less fat, more power to you, right? But I think the exponential opportunity for AI is the moment, right? The moment you automate, resist that alluring call to do the stock buyback or share, lay off the people. Rather, take a breath, think, wow, I've actually got surplus brain power. What could I do with this? And then get busy imagining higher level pursuits. That's the number one thing I'm seeing, brother, is all these organizations who are trying to get fast, right? Right, cheap. What they should actually do is start thinking, no, how can you grow? Right? How can you do altogether new things that you can finally get cracking at because you've got these freed cycles? And to me, it's the difference between, like a diet pill and rocket fuel.
There you go. I love that one. Okay, so those are trends. So we got the other kind of back half of this. About investing. So you had a venture / private equity firm. You work with companies who are laying out lots of investments and making bets on technologies. And our listeners are a mix of, maybe college kids, blue collar, white collar, tech futurists, board members. So it's a very diverse audience. When you think about investing with all the background, what would you like, just kind of just a perspective, your lens on what you would tell this broad audience about how do you think of investing in these exponential times?
Yeah, man, that's the multi-million, billion, trillion-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, gosh, you know, I would say at a high level, my thesis has always been that if you can marry up a couple of non-obvious concepts into something elevated that's north of any given problem set, that you're going to tend to win. Our venture firm years ago, this was from 2013 to 2019, um, we called our model David and Goliath Incorporated. And, and the idea was at the time, right, circa 2013, it felt like it was enterprises versus entrepreneurs, right? David versus Goliath. And we had this recognition that, with a little bit of, if you remember, like the Charlie Brown Christmas show, right? They do their hand thing and the little tree like is suddenly great.
Oh, and then Pigpen would walk on by and you see like,
He wrecks it all, yeah.
that.
With a little bit of those Charlie Brown hands, you could turn a startup from one sector or one domain into something that was wildly appealing and attractive to an enterprise from another, right? We had a great success in the form of a startup called Point Drive. Point Drive was, I believe it was Irish Angels portfolio company as well. Uh, their story was that they built an on sort of an on-device tool where real estate brokers, realtors, people of that sort, they could send an email to a prospect, and the app would monitor the eye time, right? Like, where is the person lingering? Do they love the kitchen? Do they love the price, or do they hate the price? And remember that old movie Dodgeball, David?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's that great scene where the guy goes, if you can dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball. Well, it occurred to us like, man, if you could sell a house, you could probably sell an insurance policy. And so we worked with Point Drive to help them realize that they had not just built a wonderful tool to sell apartments on, Chicago's North Side. They had built a tool that could help sell commercial real estate insurance policies, right? It could help sell, mid market, you know, uh, policies of any sort. And at the time, it felt like it required these acts of Herculean creativity. Like, man, how are we going to reposition this David for that Goliath? But what we eventually realized was the trick was pulling the court back and looking for commonalities between domains. And so for me, the investment thesis was at the time and continues to be, how do you see breadth of opportunity where others are super siloed, right? You can't read the label when you're inside a given jar. And so if you're looking to win in finance, you're going to have a hard time with all these other finance startups who are trying to outfinance each other with finance, right? Because you're playing a zero-sum competitive game. Pull back and say, what could somebody completely outside of this sector do, right? And I think that's what tends to drive disruptors. It tends to drive outside returns, is people who connect dots between unexpected disciplines and elevate.
Yeah, and it's a bit almost where the innovation comes too, right? You got to just use I mean, and think about your background too, anthropology, philosophy,
Yeah,
growing up on the southeast side of Chicago, right? I mean, like you put all that stuff together, right?
right.
And and I think everybody, it's those innovations and different things that I think pull that together. So it's a good perspective on investing. When you think about the last area of the exponential growth is around leadership, right? So
Yeah,
amazing times, if there's some leaders are a little bit anxious in some of these big companies because of the amount of disruption that's coming.
yep.
Some leaders, I think you talked about it, you could be, you can use tech to drive efficiency, you can be efficiency, you could be an innovator. What do you you work with a lot of leaders, right? You see
Yeah.
suites at some of the world's largest companies. What do what would you tell our audience? And leadership is at all levels, right? You could be blue collar leader, you could be a student leader, you could be what would you tell our audience based on everything you see in these times of exponential growth? How do you best lead, or what are some leadership principles that either
Yeah.
stand the test of time or new that are not upon us?
Yeah. Man, we talked earlier about it, never being a trickier time to be an employee and it never being a better time to be an entrepreneur. It, if you pull the lens back on that a little, back to this breadth idea, this landscape view, I think what I'd recommend to people right now as regards leadership is if it feels like authenticity, if it feels like seeing a need and filling a need, if it feels like thinking straight and talking straight, that's enduring leadership. Because the opposite of that, right? The opposite of that is orthodoxy, right? Well, this is the way we've always done things in these parts. Uh-oh, right? Inertia. Well, it's a proven winner. Don't mess with success. Uh-oh, right? If it's a presumption that you're going to be taken care of, right? Uh-oh, right? The 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 high level feeling that I'm getting, the structural change that I'm seeing in the economy right now, is that red tape has never felt redder, and that bureaucracy has never been, I think, a bigger threat to clarity of thinking and of intent. And so, what I would recommend, anybody who's interested in really being a leader is if you can lead authentically with purpose, with vision, with values inside of the four walls of an established organization, by all means, go for it, right? It's great to have supports and capital and help, right? Great people by your side. But the moment you feel compelled to toe an historical line that's there for, again, orthodoxy or inertia's sake, I think that's the canary in the coal mine. That's the tell that, okay, um, future favors, you know, I think the authentic and no more so than in this age of AI. I mean, buddy, think about it. The the frontier AI models are trained at replicating the known. And so if your organization prizes conformity, prizes behaving, right? My son in his video games, right? And who am I kidding? I'm a geek. I play video games, right? NPCs,
Me
non-player
too.
characters.
I grew up playing video games. Love
Amen.
them.
But if 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 you feel like you're being asked to be a non-player character, an NPC, right? Like pantomiming professionalism, like the robots are going to come for that stuff first, right? But back to everything we've discussed, if you're pulling the lens back and dot connecting between a whole variety of different disciplines that are uniquely yours, and the AI hasn't seen yet, right? The AI hasn't seen, David, your unique path or mine, right? I think our authenticity is going to be our rocket fuel in this next era, right? What hasn't the model seen? Right? Mavericks, rule breakers, dot connectors. That's my
Yeah.
leadership piece.
Well, you're right. It's like it's authenticity, it's the dot connectors, bit of the interview, and it's kind of pulling that all. And I love those different examples that you gave. Bureaucracy, and the thing about bureaucracy, I think that is just it's just so inherent and so embedded in organizations, and it's a competitive albatross in a world that is moving so fast, where you have one person unicorn startups that are, that's an exponential curve. One person
Right.
unicorn startups. Maybe like a couple years ago there was one or two, and now you're kind of hearing about them every month now. So it's that bureaucracy is gonna be tough. So I think you laid out some great principles there, Mike.
Uh,
So look, you got a lot of things going on. Uh, any last thoughts, and then how do people stay connected? I know you're active on LinkedIn, but how do people stay
yeah.
connected with all the great content and work that you're putting out.
Oh, thank you, bud. I'm grateful for the opportunity to plug, as they used to say on the talk shows. Um, Johnny Carson would give it like, here's your chance to plug. Um, thing one, I would just say, you know, I have a book, soon to be published, major
Oh,
title with
oh,
Penguin
that's
Random
right.
House.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. I did remember hearing about that.
and
Yeah.
keep your eyes out for that. If you're interested in joining the book insider list, hit me up at my website, which is www.mikebechtel. So it's MikeBech.tel, and we'll get you all styled up with that. Shocker, the book is about a lot of the concepts David and I jammed about, right? This idea of breadth being the new depth, and dot connectors and authenticity being I think, the hall pass through this crazy valley of AI. And then, yeah, I have a newsletter, a weekly newsletter I call Onward, which you can find on Substack or LinkedIn. I just try to share a little taste of what's new and next in tech. Honestly, David, I do it as an accountability partner. Like
Yeah.
if I don't have, I think we're up to like 11,000 people, something nuts. But if I don't have 11,000 people expecting it every Thursday, I might forget to stay frosty myself. So
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I
and it kind of pushes you and forces you to kind of think, get some clarity
yeah,
and that's authenticity, right? To your
yeah, man.
point, to your earlier point.
And
And
then
then
if I
and
can
then
help,
oh,
oh, I
yeah,
was
go
just
ahead.
going to say, yeah, if I can help make sense of what's new and next, in tech, culture, society, or otherwise for, anybody's organization, public speaking is the primary way that I butter my bread. And so, but as Bill Murray said from Ghostbusters, right? No job is too big, no fee is too big. But in truth, whether it's at the board level or a company all hands, if you want to be, as what do you call it, David, edutained, uh,
Edutained, no,
that's
definitely at the tops.
that's my ambition, right? Little spoonful of sugar help that nerdy medicine go down.
Mike, thank you so much. You have a lot going on, starting your business. You have a book, and it's just honored that you take the time to be on the pod. So thanks. And hey, for those who are listening, he's got a book coming out. He's on LinkedIn. He's got a newsletter. Stay connected, and we'll be putting out more clips like this. Thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you, David.